Two things happened in my life that changed the way I look at Excel. The first one happened in 2005 and the second one happened in 2008. Let me tell you the first story. Back in 2005, I started as a summer intern with Glenmark Pharmaceuticals. My job is to meet 56 different dermatologists, the skin doctor, and run a survey on them. This was like a really exciting thing for me back then because I was traveling to all these different parts of India, meeting new people, staying in exotic hotels, and all of that. When the whole trip finished and I did all these surveys, I thought my job was done. But only then I realized that I had to analyze all this survey data and make a project report before the deadline. I didn't know anything about Excel back then. And that was like a swift kick in the bum that I needed to realize how important Excel is if I want to be successful in the workplace. Fortunately, one of my colleagues, Kamlakar, is pretty good with Excel. So he helped me with some pivot tables and formulas, and I was able to prepare the project report in time and submit it. So today I want to talk to you about how I would learn Excel if I just have 3 months time. What is it that I would focus on and how I would structure my learning process. I call this as the 4-3-3 plan. So essentially I would focus on 4 things and I would structure my learning into 3 different lanes. If it is a roadmap, you could think that it has 3 different lanes, and I'll try to learn everything in 3 months. Hence the name 4-3-3. So let's get into the 4-3-3 plan, where I'm going to show you what is it that I will focus on and how I would structure my learning process. When we finish, I'll tell you the other story from 2008. Let's go. So what is this 4-3-3 plan? The 4 stands for 4 areas of focus. These are, I call them as GCAP. That's why I'm wearing a cap. So GCAP stands for get data, clean it, analyze it, and present it. So those are the 4 main activities that I would do as a data analyst. The 3 lanes of the plan are technical lane, that is where I'm going to learn how to do the technical bits. Project lane, and this is where whatever technical skills I'm learning, I'll try to implement them as part of a project so that it all makes sense in a real world situation. And then the domain lane. This is where I would be learning specific domain related things so that I could do my job better. And the last 3 stands for 3 months. This is because I think if you stretch it longer than 3 months, then you will lose focus. At least for me, 3 months seems like the ideal sweet spot. I could probably set my focus for that much time and learn it. Oh, by the way, if you're thinking this is all a little too much and you won't remember any of it when the video finishes, I've got a PDF guide that kind of explains all of this with the clear links and pointers on what to do at each point in time. The link for that is in the video description below. Do check that out and download the PDF so that you could use it as a handy companion guide for this video. Month 1. In month 1, I will focus on the important bits of my GCAP, that is how to get the data and how to clean it. Because there is a popular saying in the data analysis world. It's called garbage in, garbage out. So if you put garbage data into your analysis, all the outputs, all the analysis that you do would be useless. So this is why it is really important to get good quality data. Make sure that it is clean before we can analyze it. So in month 1, my focus would be, we're dividing this into basically 5 weeks. Week 0 is where I will focus on learning a little bit about Excel, like where everything is, how to use the Excel UI itself, how to access things on the ribbon, how to load up files, how to understand, how to read a spreadsheet, how to save it, and all of that. Most of us would be familiar with this stuff, but still it is helpful to watch 1 or 2 tutorials or maybe read an article or 2 about Excel so that you're not really confused when you're using some of the advanced things. in weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4, essentially there is no, like, you do this every week. You try to focus on that activity for the entire month. That's how I try to focus. So in this time, I want to learn how to get the data into Excel. So this means I'm looking at how to use import from text files and CSV file options, or how to use Power Query, how to set up a connection to a database or a web page or an XML file and bring that into Excel for analysis. Once the data is in Excel, then I will focus on how to clean it up, how to make sure that it is in the suitable format for analyzing the data. So this is where I would learn about how to use ranges and references in Excel, how to use tabular formatting in Excel. And then towards the end of that month, I will also try to learn a little bit about doing some basic analysis of the data. That is everything there? Are there any duplicate values in the data? Are there any missing values, blanks, and all sorts of stuff? So just understand the data, explain the data to somebody. Like, if I got a bunch of survey results from these dermatologists, and I just want to know how many of them have answered yes for a specific question, how to get that answer quickly, how to do that in Excel. Remember, the roadmap has 3 lanes. So this is my technical side of things. Likewise, I would also try to do a simple project this month so that I am implementing these skills in a real world situation. For example, back when I was learning, I was kind of stretching this 3-month plan into a full 3-year plan, really, because that's how much time it took for me to understand and use Excel better. But if I'm doing it today, what I would do is I'll do a project where I'll try to take all my credit card statements for the last 1 or 2 years and consolidate them into one Excel file. So either using automation techniques like Power Query or manual approaches or some other ways, but get all of this data into one big table in Excel so that maybe I could do some further analysis of it in the follow-up months. Another project that you could also try, and this is something that I did when I was learning Excel, is I am a big fan of movies. Especially, I used to have this goal that I should watch all the top 500 movies in the IMDb movie database. I would download the listing of the movies, or top 500 or 250 movies, and then I'll build a checklist so that every time I saw a movie, we would check that off. In fact, me and my roommate back then, Govardhan, we had this thing going on. So we would kind of look up for these movies, bring them up and watch them in the weekends. And then when I go back, I'll say, oh, I watched this movie, I'm going to check that. So maybe you could do something like that. If you're a fan of movies or sports or cooking or anything else for that matter, photography, whatever is that you enjoy as a passion in your life, maybe you can add a little bit of structure around it through a spreadsheet so that you can track things. And that will also give you a chance to build something where you're passionate about. So you're not really feeling like this is work, you're enjoying this as a hobby. And in month 2, now that we kind of got the data, we know how to do some basic cleanup activities on the data. I'll focus on how to analyze the data. And this is the month where we are also going to bring in that domain lane into the plan, because so far we are just learning the technical bits and maybe doing a project. But when it comes to doing analysis and presenting, a lot depends on what is the domain or the functional area of business you are in, because based on that, your Excel analysis or any other analysis really changes. So the focus in this month would be analysis. In fact, month 2 and 3 are kind of like overlapping, because analyzing and presenting are not separate activities. There is a lot of overlap. Whatever you analyze, you present, and based on the feedback, you may have to go back and do more analysis and more presentation. So things kind of flow between these two things. But essentially, in this month, I'm going to focus on, again, 4 activities or 5 activities, how to use various formulas in Excel that are relevant for your line of work. If you're not sure what your line of work is going to be, let's just say you're still in college. That was the case for me when I kind of started learning Excel. I was finished my summer internship, then I went back for 1 more year of studies before I started working. So I had time to kind of build up the skills. So I would focus on important functions like sums, counts, conditional sums and counts, writing if then conditions, lookups, and those kind of things. And how to work with the references, because Excel has various styles of references. You have relative, absolute, and then tabular references and all of that. So using those references and newer features like spill ranges, etc. And then also not using functions. So we learn how to use functions, but you want to learn how to not use functions and still get the answer. So this is where maybe things like pivot tables, flash fill, power pivot, all of those things come into picture. You don't want to overdo this because some of these are deeply technical, and unless you apply them in a real world situation, you won't remember or appreciate what they are for very much. So take it lightly, just get familiarity, understand where everything is, and then based on the work that you're doing, you can actually pick and choose what aspects to learn. So pivot tables, flash fill, power pivot are some of the things. And then expand on the same things again, how to do some simple statistical analysis, not complicated stuff, really simple stuff like calculating averages, medians, distributions, frequencies, those kind of stuff. And then maybe some of the domain things. So for example, going back to my survey example from 2005, the thing that really bothered me was how do I present this survey data, because it's all over the place. How do I present it? So there is some standard analysis that we use when you have survey data. You have got Likert analysis, those kind of things. So if you are familiar with those terms, then only you can do the analysis. But this is where sometimes you have to get out of Excel, out of Python, or out of Power BI, whatever is the tool, and then learn about the domain. So maybe talk to a colleague or a friend who is already working in the industry, talk to your superiors, all of that, understand what is happening. I particularly remember doing this a lot during my business analyst time, because when I started, I had no idea what are the analysis tasks that I would be doing. I know kind of the other side of things, but not the Excel side of things. So I spent a lot of time watching some of my colleagues and seniors build up all these project plans, estimation models, and all of that. And that kind of gave me a sense of, okay, these are the things that I need to learn. And I was able to focus more. So, getting that like a sponge, suck up what are the domain skills that are needed to be successful, and then translate those domain ideas into what would be the relevant Excel bits that I need to learn to do that. In the same month, towards the end, I would also start thinking about whatever I'm analyzing, how do I present it? So how do I take this and then make it presentable? How do I make it look good? How do I apply formats? How do I take out unnecessary bits so that it looks clean and nice when somebody else sees it? So for this month, the projects kind of could be expanding the credit card thing that you are building, or maybe doing something else altogether, like build a retirement planner or an expense tracker, or a travel itinerary planner, anything like that, where there is a little bit of data but you also want to analyze. One fun project, and this is something that not everybody can do, but if you are in that life situation where it applies to you, I highly recommend doing is build a wedding planner, especially if you have got a wedding coming up in your own life or someone else in your life. Try to build a wedding planner in Excel. Weddings are where there is a lot going on. You have a guest list, you have a vendor list, you have this, that, so much things happening. So building that could be a little bit fun and interesting, and it kind of adds the whole another dynamic to the things. So in month 3, we're going to break this again into four weeks. Week 1 would be thinking about what charts to make for each situation, because Excel has about 25 plus different types of charts, and you want to understand when and how to use each of these charts. In week 2, I would focus on how to create them and how to customize them. And then the third week, the focus would be more on how do I make whatever I'm creating dynamic, interactive, and repeatable. Because in many business situations, whatever you are creating, it's not one and done. you may have to keep on making them and updating them as your data changes, as your demands change and all of that. So you don't want to go back and every month start building the same charts again and again. It gets very boring, and it's not inspiring at all. So one thing that I would focus on learning is how to make stuff dynamic. So if things change, I don't want to change anything. Excel should be able to produce stuff for me. How do I make them interactive so that whatever graph I make, when I show it to my client or my manager, they can actually change it to what they want by clicking a button or doing something. And then finally, towards the end of the roadmap, I'll also start thinking about, now that I know all of these things, how can I be faster? How can I get in and out? How can I produce the results without taking too much time? So start thinking about productivity and improving your performance. So that is the month three's technical focus. In terms of the domain focus, I would spend more time thinking about what are some of the standard reports and graphs that are produced in my line of work. How can I make them? How can I make them better? How can I automate them? All of those things are what I would start thinking about. How can I calculate these? And another fun challenge that I would encourage you to think about is, let's say you are working in customer service thing and you need to calculate turnaround time. So I would start thinking about what would be the formula for doing that and what can be the other ways to calculate it. If not this formula, what other formulas can I use? Or if not this function, maybe can I use a pivot table to do it? Can I use some other thing to do it? All of that. So this will kind of give you more than one way to solve a problem, which is a really helpful skill to have, because when you have more time, you would build something that is robust. But if your boss says, I need this yesterday, then you can always come to give them the results in a quick and dirty manner. So learning different routes to the problem kind of makes it better, and also you remember these things better if you know more than one way to get somewhere. What about a project for this month? At this point, I would try to really engage in a workplace project rather than doing my own personal projects, because that will be better suited now that you are familiar with Excel. But if you are still in college like I was at some point, then I would start thinking about maybe building a small business dashboard, or building a business plan using Excel, or a financial model using Excel, or one of those kind of things where you're combining all the little concepts that we have learned in all these months into one thing. Okay, so now let's talk about the 2008 story. In 2008, I was working as a business analyst with Tata Consultancy Services. Our client, Nationwide Insurance in Columbus, Ohio. I was thrusted into a project all of a sudden, and I didn't really know anything. One day my manager called up and said, you're going to be part of this project from tomorrow. So I had this client meeting the next day, and I was quite nervous. How am I gonna go and impress them? So I talked to some of my colleagues and I understood what is going to happen and what the big pain points were. So all I did for my first big meeting with the client is I made a spreadsheet where I outlined all the important activities that we are going to do, what the deliverables are, and what the timeline looks like. It's kind of like a simplified project plan, but I just made it in Excel. But I made sure that it looks nice and good and it conveys the points. This is what the project is all about. This is what we are going to do. This is how things are going to happen. And I showed it to our client and he was super impressed. Mind you, I didn't know much about the technology that we are going to work on or what the overall project or anything is, but I was able to prepare a simple document to outline what the things that we are going to do. He is really happy that he immediately said, yes, we are doing it. And he gave me a really big compliment on the day itself. So that's when I realized the importance of not just having the skills, but showcasing them, making sure that people understand that. So that is why I wanted to share both of those stories to you from 2005 to 2008. It took me almost 3 years to become very proficient in Excel. But hopefully with this roadmap, you would be pretty good in 3 months or 6 months, however long it takes for you. So I wish you all the best in your journey. And if you need a guide or a someone to handhold you and make sure that you are proceeding through this process, then I suggest looking at my Excel School program. It is an online class where I teach all the things that I covered in the roadmap in a greater detail, and it is a step-by-step program. So you don't have to go look in different sources and learn pieces from here and there and try to stitch together. You can just focus on learning, building your knowledge, complete the projects, and be good in Excel for data analysis work. So if you're interested in that, do check the video description for a link of the Excel School program and sign up for that course. Whichever way you learn, I wish you all the very best and more power to you. Bye.